Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to Marquette University Law School, Eckstein Hall. I'm Mike Goucher, and this is On the Issues. This is our continuing series of conversations with news and policymakers, people who are doing interesting, important work in this region and beyond. Today, we're going to be talking about the request by the city of Waukesha to divert Lake Michigan water to meet the water needs of Waukesha in the coming years. And to help us have that discussion, we're going to be talking with the mayor of Waukesha, who is seated next to me, Shawn Reilly. And seated next to Mayor Reilly is Mayor John Dickert from the city of Racine. So won't you please give them a warm welcome to Marquette University Law School. So we should say for the record, this is not a formal debate, it's a discussion, it's a conversation about the request, what it is, what it isn't, what it could mean and what it might not mean. It is safe to say, though, that obviously Mayor Reilly favors the diversion, and Mayor Dickert is opposed to it. And so we'll let them elaborate on their views in this next half hour, and we'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for questions from you, members of the audience. So, Mayor Reilly, let me begin with you, because we should know right off the bat what this request is, what are you asking for, and why?
Well, what I'm really asking for is a clean, safe, sustainable source of water for the city of Waukesha. What we have is an aquifer that's declining and also is contaminated. We're really in a unique situation in Waukesha because we depend upon the deep wells for our water. Those deep wells have declined significantly. They are also becoming more contaminated by natural contaminants, which is radium as well as total dissolved solids. So we're in a situation where we need to find a new water source, and we've studied this issue for more than 10 years. We've come to the conclusion that our only reasonable option is to obtain water from Lake Michigan. 5 years ago, the DNR, we submitted our application, and the DNR has been studying this application for more than 5 years. They've come to the conclusion that the only reasonable option for Waukesha to have sustainable clean water is to also obtain water from Lake Michigan. And in addition, Sewer Pack has also studied it and also come to the same conclusion. What we have, I think most people are aware that we're outside of the boundary of the Great Lakes Basin.
Right.
At our closest point, 1.5 miles outside the basin. The compact that was adopted—
Great Lakes Compact in 2008.
Right, adopted in 2008, says that communities similar to Waukesha, or communities that are outside the basin but within a county that is partially within the basin, can apply for Great Lakes water under certain limited circumstances. Really, you need some unique circumstances. There has to be no other reasonable option. And in addition, all the water that is being taken out needs to be returned. I'm actually, not all the water needs to be returned. Our application says we'll return all the water. You can have use for consumptive use. However, we're returning all the water. So we've been down working on this for, like I say, more than 10 years. We're now at the point where we're in front of, our application has been reviewed by the DNR. They've concluded that we meet the requirements, and they've sent it on to the governors of all the other Great Lakes states for them to consider our application and make a determination as to whether we meet the requirements of the compact.
And for it to go forward, you'd have to have all 8 Midwestern governors, Great Lakes governors, say, yes, we're in favor of this. Is that correct?
That's correct. My understanding is that a governor can, if a governor does not vote, that's the same as a yes vote.
Okay. 2 quick follow-up questions, then we'll bring Mayor Dickert into this. How much water do you want to, as you say, borrow from Lake Michigan?
The ultimate build-out will be 10.1 million gallons per day. That's when and our ultimate build-out is considered to be 2050. That's what we're planning for. When you build a water system, you need to think in a long time horizon. Obviously, when you build water mains, they usually stay in the ground 100 years. We're replacing mains right now that are over 100 years old. This is infrastructure that you need to think in the long term, not in the short term. So our application looks long-term as to what we will need 50 years from now, 30 years from now, 100 years from now.
And the plan is, as you described it, is to return essentially almost all of the water to Lake Michigan. You would do this by treating it. This would be treated wastewater. Where would that water go? And eventually it ends up in Lake Michigan, but where initially would that treated wastewater go?
The treated water would be outflow in Franklin.
Okay.
And then into the Root River, and then go through the Root River to Lake Michigan.
Okay. Well, let me bring in Mayor Dickert, because this does affect you. The Root River runs through Racine County and certainly empties into Lake Michigan. And so you have your own perspective on this request. You're opposing it. Why?
Well, there's really two key issues that I'll start with, and I think we'll get into more of it as we move on. The first one is, if you look at it parochially as a mayor, we are both trying to do the best thing that we can for our community, and that's our job, and Mayor Reilly's a great mayor, and he's doing that. What we have to look at is the effluent that's coming down the Root River. So it has number one, it's a more of a volume for the Root River, and some people argue that's good or bad, and I will tell you, we've had a 100-year flood and a 500-year flood in the last couple of years in Racine, and when you've got a 500-year flood, every ounce that's more than that, than you're supposed to have, is not happy for the people along the river who are watching that water creep up to their house. So that's one component of it.
Flooding is one concern.
Well, flooding during the flood,
Okay.
you know what happens. But because remember, the Root River, Racine only gets flooded when Milwaukee gets hit hard with rain, not when Racine gets hit hard with rain. So the other piece of that is really what's in that effluent, okay? So water departments right now are not accustomed to, or are they ready to really provide for the phosphorus levels that we need to pull out of effluent. But really there's a couple new components that are really damaging to us in Lake Michigan and for all the river tributaries, and that's viruses and pharmaceuticals. And we have been actually talking with the pharmaceutical industry, and I've been talking with the national Walgreens groups and people like that, saying we should all work together on this, because those pharmaceuticals we're seeing are having a dramatic impact on our water. And we're seeing that in Lake Michigan, that all of the outflows of pharmaceuticals. So when you add all those components, the reality is we're working very hard to make the Root River from Lake Michigan back an attainable water system. And right now it's not. So anything that you add to that adds to the complexity and the problems of the Root River. Now, some people may say, well, the river can handle it, or the lake can handle it, and it'll disperse, but there's a couple things that we look at as a city. Number one, I don't know if you've been down by the dam in Racine, but if you go down there, you'll see a cadre of fishermen from all over, literally all over the world, fishing there because we have the record for, I believe it's brown trout, coming out of that river. And I taunt the other mayors with that because we beat Grand Rapids by half a pound. So I like to taunt them on a regular basis, but that is a hot spot for fishing. And fishing is a major industry with us. We have the Salmonorama, the largest in-lake fishing tournament in the world is in Racine. We have all those things that make a difference for us. My doctor, Dr. Julie Kinzelman, who is world-renowned for her work on beaches and waterway systems, actually has done such a great job with Lake Michigan and North Beach that she's now moving up the river to find out where all the problem areas are up the river, and that's a huge piece for us. So take that parochial component, okay? That river, Root River, drains out basically right down the beach from North Beach, and North Beach for Racine is not only the 198th best rated beach in the world, not in the country, in the world. It is the source of the best tasting drinking water in the world, by the way. But about 200,000 visitors visit that beach every year. And we're only a city of 80,000 people. So if you do the math, that's one of our biggest tourist attractions, period. So we go to great lengths to make sure that that beach is clean. And it's so clean, it's won 9 years of Blue Wave certification. So that's one piece of it. Now I'm going to ask you to take a step up with me and fly up about 10,000 feet. What the mayor's asking to do, and the mayors before him have asked to do, he's doing the best for his community, and God bless him for doing that. What we have to look at, and I sit on the U.S. Conference of Mayors Water Council, so we deal with water issues all over the country, and then I sit on coastal management here in Wisconsin, and then I sit on the binational Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, and that's all the mayors on the Great Lakes that are there to protect the Great Lakes. So when you look at this issue from that perspective, it comes down to an issue of, are you setting precedent? And there's a debate on that,
right.
and people will debate that, and that's what the Great American System is all about. But the problem that the mayors of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative look at is that, do we want to help Waukesha with their problem? Yes, and we think maybe there's some other ways to do that. But the reality is, there are 7 communities immediately that any doorway to the compact being open will stick a straw in the lake. Now, they're not guaranteeing that they're going to return the flow like Waukesha is, but it's a precedent issue. There are over 100 communities in the Great Lakes region that also want to stick a straw in the lake. They're not guaranteeing necessarily that they're going to return the water either.
Are they straddling the Great Lakes Basin?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we look at is, I think about my kids. When I make my decisions, I think about my kids and the next generations. Are we going to be the ones that make the decision that open the gateway? Now, some people may say, so what? Right, they're close to the Great Lakes. Who cares? True conversations, honest to God conversations. My last 2 national meetings on the Great Lake, or on the U.S. Conference of Mayors Water Council, 2 mayors from Arizona asked me to consider a Keystone pipeline to Lake Michigan. And I looked at them jokingly and said, that's really funny. And they said, we're not kidding. We want to tap into the Great Lakes. And I said, well, that's not going to happen because you're a desert. And you're going to stay a desert. And they said, yeah, but why not? And I said, because you will drain the Great Lakes. And candidly, Mother Nature and the glaciers gave us one shot at this. We have one body of water. And I'm going to be a little parochial about this, and I'm going to say, y'all can come to me, because we're not going out to you, especially that far out. So when people look at that issue, oftentimes they will say, well, Mayor, that's ridiculous. No one would ever do that. But here's the problem that we have as mayors and elected officials. When you set a precedent, we lose control. And now it's all court cases. And candidly, I concern myself with the court cases that are now going to be going on for the rest of our lives as to who really has access to that water. And that is becoming an issue around this entire company, or this country, whether it's aquifers or rivers or whatever. Water is the issue, and this is the new gold.
I will let you respond to the 10,000-foot observation here in a moment, but let me begin with what Mayor Dickert described as the more parochial concern. It's about water quality, how that's going to affect North Beach, how it's going to affect the Root River, things like that. Can Waukesha assure the people of, for example, in Racine County, that the water that's going to go into the Root River and eventually into Lake Michigan is going to be meeting standards? Can you assure them of that?
Yes, we can, absolutely. I guess there are different ways of looking at this. However, if this glass of water here is muddy and you add clean water to it, it becomes less muddy. What we have here is the Root River is a muddy river. During dry months, it's basically pools with very little flow. With the Waukesha treated water going into it, it will become, we have lower, there will be phosphorus in our water, but it's much lower than what's in the river right now. So we'll be diluting the amount of phosphorus in the river. In addition, Mayor Dickert brought up the fishing, and our flow will allow the steelhead egg facility run by the DNR on the Root River to actually work every year. Right now, it sometimes is not really working because there's no flow on that river. The DNR has asked us to actually put our treated water into the Root River because they know that it will be helpful to the river. There's also, actually, I'm going to comment on Mayor Dickert's comment regarding the beach. It is a beautiful beach. When I did you used to have a barbecue competition at the zoo, and I would always go swimming on the beach there, and I thought that was just a beautiful area. Flooding. In the flood you had in 2008, the amount of water that we'd be putting in the river would not even have been measurable. When it's the 100-year flood, it's minuscule. It's a very, very little amount of additional water. And you think of it, it's a minimum flow that's being added to the Root River of treated water that is cleaner than the water that's in the river right now. So this will actually help the Root River. What
about his argument about precedent? That if we do this for Waukesha, there's 7 other cities immediately ready to jump in and make the same request, and there may be dozens more beyond that would consider making that request. What about that?
Well, as a precedent, the precedent was set when all the states and the 2 Canadian provinces agreed to enter into the compact. This was a negotiation among many states, and the compact itself is an absolutely wonderful document. It doesn't really happen much where you get 8 states and 2 Canadian provinces, the federal government and the Canadian government all to come together to say, let's protect the Great Lakes. And that's what the compact does. It really is saying no water will ever go to Arizona, and we're going to work on problems in regards to invasive species and things like that. However, when it was approved, there was 5 states that said, we need the language in there, and we won't agree to the compact unless there's language in regards to straddling communities or straddling counties, communities in straddling counties, receiving water under circumstances like the city of Waukesha. So we're not setting a precedent. We're actually saying, okay, we're going to make this compact work. We already agreed that this can be done. So if this is permitted, if the application is approved, we're making the compact stronger. Because if you say no, you're saying, well, the terms of the compact, some of them we're going to accept, but others we aren't. And that doesn't work. You can't make that argument and still want the compact to work.
Let me have you jump in, and because he's giving assurances about the water quality, first of all, and then, you know, his take on Mayor Reilly's take on this nature of precedent, what that means or what it doesn't mean.
The compact really outlines the fact that the withdrawal of water in the way that this whole thing was structured is really your last resort. And I think that what has happened is that has kind of been moved up to the first resort. And I think that's the difficulty of the discussion. When you look at the new technologies that are there now, which have changed literally after the last couple of years, the fact that people are conserving far more water than they've ever conserved, the mayor's done a great job of talking to his people about conservation of water. Those are key components in this. But remember that I don't believe that in the proposal that is out there right now, there is a great deal of money going into the wastewater system. So to clean up all phosphorus, take out all pharmaceuticals, and some of the other issues that we have in our water would be a huge upper for the city of Waukesha just to be able to do that. The flooding issue is a minor issue, and I make that more out of the fact that when you're sitting on that river and there's a flood, you don't want any speck of water coming from anywhere else. But the reality is that the bigger issues that we're dealing with right now, as the Great Lakes and as a community, are phosphorus and pharmaceuticals. And right now, I don't know of any water department that is really doing a very good job or using the excessive amount of money that you need to take out pharmaceuticals.
Let me bounce that off you. I mean, is Waukesha equipped to treat this water in a way that it will meet the standards that are required and expected?
Absolutely.
Do we have to do anything to upgrade your system or anything like that?
We're actually, Mayor Dickert referred to, we haven't spent the money. Unfortunately, for our ratepayers, we were spending $45 million in this year and last year. And I'll put my sewage treatment plant up against any sewage treatment plant in the state of Wisconsin. And I have not done it yet, but I'd also compare it to Racine's. I mean, really, that's, we will meet every single requirement for sewage treatment outflow on the Root River. We don't have an option. It's called a permitting process, and you have to meet those requirements.
Right, but those, I just want to make it clear, those are DNR requirements to meet a standard outflow. That does not mean that the effluent coming down is not going to have all the components that I just talked about. And remember that if during a dry season, and they talked about the flow of water, during the dry season you will have more of a flow of water coming down because of the wastewater coming down from Waukesha. However, that means it's also a condensed amount of sewage treatment water coming down the outflow, not natural water coming from our streams or tributaries. So, you know, we as a city are starting to see an increased level of pharmaceuticals in the water that are concerning us greatly. Any addition to that from anywhere else does us no good, and we are downstream. So, and under this current proposal, there is no money for us for monitoring. So, we're candidly the folks at the end of the line, and that's tough for us, obviously, to sell to the city of Racine. But I don't think that the compact was designed to go after Great Lakes water first. And as much as we, and are you an attorney? Because I'm not an attorney.
Yes.
Okay, you're an attorney, so he's smarter than I am. But
I became a politician because everyone always made fun of attorneys.
So then now they make fun of him. He went from one to the other. That's kind of rough.
It could be worse. You could be a journalist.
Yeah. So Shawn is an attorney, but and I'm not, you know, but I will tell you that I think that once you crack that egg, what I always worry about, and no offense to my attorney friends out there, or judges or anybody else, but you open that doorway and now the compact just simply becomes a battle of courts, whether it's state Supreme Courts or U.S. Supreme Courts. And I will tell you that soon enough, you've already seen it out in California, Arizona, the battle over water is just beginning. Our aquifers are drying up around this country. You're seeing it everywhere, and everybody is starting to turn to water. And I can't say this enough. If we don't think that by setting a precedent, any precedent at all, we're not opening the door to who knows what coming down, I think we're making a mistake. And the reason I say that is because, like I said before, I worry about my kids. And if somebody can come in and start saying, listen, I got enough money and I'm going to sue you to death until you give me that water, okay, then where does it go? Then how far do we go outside to make that happen? The algal bloom, swing back to the algal bloom issue. The algal bloom issue that we're dealing with phosphorus is in Green Bay. It's in South Chicago. Has anyone seen Toledo lately? 21 miles you have to drive out in a boat to get to open water. Otherwise, it's pea soup. They shut down their city a couple of years back because of the reaction of the algal bloom and microcystins to their people. So these are happening right now. And we're trying our best to try to keep up with it, and we can't. So any load of phosphorus, I mean, I was having a very heated conversation with the Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Vilsack. We have to make this a comprehensive effort to stop this, and that means every bit of it.
I'll give you a quick chance to respond to that, and then I want to follow up with something else here.
Sure. First of all, what Mayor Dickert is I think trying to get to is that the city of Waukesha sewage the treated water from the city of Waukesha needs to be meet every single parameter for not having anything in it. There is no sewage treatment plant that does that. Every single community around the Great Lakes that has an outflow into the Great Lakes has parameters and hopefully meets those parameters. Almost 473 communities in Wisconsin have their outflow to rivers. Basically what Mayor Dickert is saying is that Waukesha should not have outflow from its sewage treatment plant because there may be something in it. That's just not even reasonable or practical. The other thing I also want to state is Mayor Dickert said that in order to get water from the Great Lakes for a community like Waukesha, it has to be the last resort. I am an attorney, and actually the legal analysis, the legal words that are used is it's the only reasonable option. There's a significant difference between only reasonable option and last resort. And that keeps on being stated over and over again, and for me, that's very frustrating.
Let me follow up on that reasonable option, because this is where you hear people who are opposed to this diversion request say things like, Waukesha could conserve more. Waukesha could do other things to treat the radium in their water. Some communities are already doing this. Even your predecessor sort of hinted that there might be other solutions rather than diverting Lake Michigan water. What do you say to people who say, or they also say, why do we have to have other communities like the town of Waukesha or the town of Delafield involved in this request? What do you say to the people who say there are other options out there?
Okay, you really brought up three different points. One is conservation.
Right.
We are ahead of our game that we started to begin with for conserving water. The city of Waukesha was the first community in the state of Wisconsin to have bans on daytime sprinkling. We have toilet rebates. We have an outreach program where we're in the schools. We're replacing fixtures in the schools. And I'll put our community up against any other community in the state of Wisconsin or even in the Great Lakes as to what we're doing, comparing that community to us as to conserving water. We're ahead of what we submitted to the DNR in an application on water conservation. By 2050, we'll have up to 10% measurable savings on water conservation. So I'm saying we are conserving. That doesn't mean that we don't need a new water supply. We have an aquifer that's declining. We have an aquifer that's contaminated. Treatment of radium, yes, if that was our only problem, we could treat the radium, but we don't have an aquifer that's going to last for very long if we keep on pulling water out of it. And it continues to get worse and worse in regards to total dissolved solids and radium. Sewer service area or water service area, that's called good planning. What you do, this isn't something that we put together. This is the state of Wisconsin said in order to determine what areas of service we're going to provide, they make boundaries. And they match that boundary right to our sewer service area. And they're doing this throughout the state of Wisconsin because it is good planning. I also want to add that in the areas, there's parts of 4 towns that are within our water service area. Out of those areas, 70% of it is already developed. We're not, it's not there for development for us or anything like that. 15% of it is environmental corridor. It will never be developed. 15% may ultimately be developed, and whether it develops if we get approved for the application, whether it gets Lake Michigan water depends upon whether they want Lake Michigan water. Right now, you have the 70% that's developed is developed with residential properties in the towns and things like that, and they're generally on their own well and septic. We actually our water and sewer goes outside our boundaries anyways, but for those people that are already on water and septic, they don't want to pay for city sewer and water unless they have to. The DNR did the water service plan so that if anything happens in those areas, this is an option that can be provided to them. So we get a lot of objections to our application is that it's all about growth. It's not about growth. I wouldn't have the city of Waukesha be spending $200 million plus to add an additional 15% of new land.
How is it? Who's going to pay the $200 million cost for this?
The city of Waukesha, the ratepayers. We need to.
What would that mean for a ratepayer? A typical ratepayer, do we know?
The estimates are it would increase our rates about 3%. Now, obviously, we're going to work to try to. I said 3%, 3 times 3 times, not 3%. That would be great. I wish I
Yeah,
could say
that would be good, yeah, yeah.
Our water rates would multiply by 3. However, obviously, one of my goals with approval is to try to find ways to make this cost less. And the biggest thing is financing. I've met with Senator Baldwin, Senator Johnson, and Congressman Sensenbrenner a number of times so that when we get approved, we can actually have the federal government help us finance this.
I should say that you want to buy the water from Oak Creek, correct?
Correct.
For the record, that's what we should say. I want to get your response to this. He's saying this is the reasonable option. We're doing other things. We've looked at other things. This is it. And that the Great Lakes Compact says essentially that communities like a Waukesha can do this. Yeah. What do you say to that?
Well, we just have a general disagreement. I mean, I want to clarify one thing. The mayor's right. The DNR has said, you have to do X amount of cleaning before you send the effluent down, and that's the way they say to all wastewater systems. He's accurate about that. What I'm saying is I just don't want it. I don't want any more pharmaceuticals. I don't want any more phosphorus. I just don't want it. And we're at the end of the line. And we've kind of been left out of this conversation. So I guess my proposal is, listen, on the one side, I'm parochial about this. I don't want any more of that in my system. I'm already trying my best to get all that stuff out of the works. The reality is, in the last couple of years, we've got really smart people around here too. Whether it's Rockwell, whether it's Siemens, whoever it is, we have a lot of folks right now working on systems all over this country to deal with this issue. Texas has a huge problem with radium, and they're working with it. California has a problem. Florida has a problem. They're all dealing with these issues. And what I'm saying is that, I would hope that we take a step back to look at some solutions. There's some ionization systems that work. There's a deeper aquifer that would work. There's a lot of different things that candidly would cost the taxpayers a quarter or a third of what they're charging now. And I will tell you this, the mayor is doing an incredible job of fighting for his city. But I think this goes back, that long ago. When you're talking about 10 years ago for anything, we're looking at new processes in our water and wastewater department that are a couple of years old. So I worry about, number one, that cracking that egg of the compact. I don't think, we have a disagreement on that. I don't think that it meets the requirement. I do think that it opens up this whole process to a series of challenges and lawsuits. And candidly, I've talked to mayors all over the Great Lakes region as well as in Canada. Canada is terrified of this idea because their mayors and their provincial government is saying the same thing. This opens the door. So, this is one of many issues that we deal with at the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. But I think when you look towards the future, I just think that this is, you've got one good attorney here that says one thing, and I think you're going to have a whole bunch of other ones that are going to say something else. And I don't want to see us in that position where we lose control literally over our water.
I'll get back to your growth comment here in just a moment, but Mayor Dickert, one more question about, I guess, sort of the politics of this. There's a lot of talk about successful metropolitan areas in this country, which ones are most successful, and they tend to cooperate regionally. There tends to be a shared vision for what they're going to be. This diversion request has sort of, for lack of a better way of putting it, pitted Milwaukee against Waukesha to some degree. You're the mayor of Racine, you don't like it. If I'm a business person, or if I'm somebody who's thinking about doing something in this region, what's the message I'm getting from the battle over this diversion request? Are you worried that it sends a message that we're not on the same page, that maybe we are pretty parochial in terms of our interests?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to try to look towards the positive, right? And the positive is the M7, the positive is southeastern Wisconsin, the positive, we talked on the stage about the Tri-State Alliance and working regionally. As you can imagine, that's not always, the easiest thing in the world to do, and we've struggled through that. As a business folk, I can't speak for them because I'm a mayor. I was in business a while back. What I would think about is the fact that we are doing everything we can to protect our water. That's the first thing. We have massive industries in this community that focus on water, and we're probably one of the best areas for technology advancement and collaboration on water than anywhere in the world. But, when I look at this, collaboration has to be there on all levels. And, you know, we as the kind of the little stepchild that everybody must think Racine is down south, you know, we are always battling to try to get into the Milwaukee market, and that includes everything, though. And what I've been trying to tell everybody is that, listen, it's not just water. It's transportation, it's rail, it's all those things that we have to collaborate on. And that collaboration has not been there for us in the past. And we struggle. We're the largest city in the state of Wisconsin and one of the only large cities in the state of Wisconsin without a direct access to the eye. It's 10 minutes. So Racine and our county is always struggling to be part of this region and sometimes forgotten about. So I think it's not just water. I think there's a number of issues that if we're going to collaborate, we have to collaborate on.
You want to have a quick word on that, or can I move on to the next point, the building comment that you made about growth?
No, I guess I do want to comment on that is first of all, we are a region that needs to work together. There's really no question. We aren't always working together. I mean, it is frustrating to me that both Milwaukee and Racine are opposed, have taken public stances to be opposed to this. We negotiate. We asked Milwaukee, Racine, and Oak Creek to negotiate with us in order for us to buy water from them. We even did a study with Racine where we split the cost of what it would what was needed in order to bring their pipes far enough to the west so that we could hook up to them. But that didn't go anywhere. Milwaukee said that they wouldn't work with us unless we had just the city boundaries. Racine, we weren't able to work with them, not because of anything Racine did, but because the cost of extending the pipe turned out to be too much, and that's where we ended up going to Oak Creek. So yes, I'm going to say that this does reflect on me one of the issues where the southeastern Wisconsin region could have worked together, and unfortunately, I don't think they are.
Let me follow up here by asking you about your comments about that this is not about growth. And let me raise this, and it's a sensitive topic. There are people who say this diversion request, if it's granted, contributes to people and businesses leaving Milwaukee. That Milwaukee gets hurt in this because there's more land to be developed out in Waukesha County because the taxes may be lower in Waukesha County. That this, in some respects, contributes to flight from the city of Milwaukee. That Milwaukee, despite your best intentions, gets hurt in this. What do you say to that?
Well, I want to look at the immediate, the last 5 years. Milwaukee's doing a lot better bringing in companies in the city of Waukesha, which is great for Milwaukee. I mean, there's no question they're having a renaissance. They also have their issues that need to be addressed. I guess what I can say is I'm never going to be working on trying to talk businesses out of Milwaukee to come to Waukesha. And Mayor Dickert did refer to the M7. I think that's a great organization that's working for the betterment of the entire area. And that in being in that group, you all have taken a pledge not to do that. So I can say that we're not trying to make it so that that this water will then create a situation where we're taking business away from Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee is a place to have your business. The bigger you are, the more you're going to want to be in Milwaukee.
Let me ask just a couple more questions, and then we'll take your questions here. Mayor Dickert, I'll begin with you. So you need all 8 states, the governors of all Great Lakes states, to sign off on this. Canadians will look at this, but they do not vote on it. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, if there's one thing that we have found...
You talk to a lot of people, though. You're involved, as you stated earlier, in a lot of these organizations that deal with the future of the
There's a lot of concern. There's a lot of concern. But I will tell you this, that there's also a lot of people very nervous about water. And Flint showed us just how precious and just how fragile our water systems are. And I think that was, I actually met the mayor of Flint last week when we were out at the National Conference of Mayors meeting. And you know, we were talking earlier, there's no textbook for this job. I wish there was, because, you know, you turn to the page on what happens when your water system goes, but there's no textbook. So everybody is dealing with this, but what I think we're going to find, because I have not dove into the nuances of Flint, but I think what we're going to find is that people try to cheapen the process. And now you see the ramifications of that. We see in Toledo that people ignored everything coming down the Maumee Valley, and then you saw the result of that. We have to stop thinking and making our decisions based on the next election and start worrying about the next generation. And until we do that, we can't make good decisions for our kids. And so I fight like this, just like we fought with the mayors in Ontario that wanted to store their nuclear waste right next to the Great Lakes. And we fought like dogs, because it's just wrong. So we do get a little, pumped up about this, and the mayor's doing a great job fighting for his city. But, I look at this from the long term, and I think this is going to become a court case that we cannot win in the long term.
Mayor Reilly, I think you said at some point today that when we have the request granted, that's pretty confident. Why are you so confident?
I am confident because the compact itself says that this is to be a fact-based investigation and that you need to meet certain requirements. And that's a problem with even describing, what the application is. I mean, there's more than 3,000 pages of studies. We did 22, we did our application, and we did 22 technical memorandums to answer DNR questions. The DNR spent 5 years working on this. There's been hundreds of public hearings.
There's 3,600 public comments in the file that I saw, 3,600 from the public on this.
And so, as a fact-based process, I'm confident because the experts have gotten together and really gone in depth and looked at all the ramifications, where Waukesha is at, what needs to be done in order to solve its safe drinking water issue. And everyone has come to the same conclusion, that has really spent the time to look at all the scientific-based evidence. And they've come to the same conclusion. Then I go to the compact itself. The compact was very, very clear that there could be diversions, which also includes returning the water, under certain circumstances. And what we've put together, and because of our unique circumstances, we meet those terms. If a governor was to say, politically, I don't want this to happen because there may be additional applications in the future, well, that's going to make the compact actually unsafe. I mean, it actually will cheapen the value of the compact, because then it's like, okay, we're going to pick and choose what portions of the compact we like and which ones we don't, and we're going to throw out the ones, and some states are going to say, well, we like that portion, so we'll follow that, but we won't follow all the others. Legally, that does not work.
30 seconds.
Well, I just think there's a couple things. First of all, there's probably as many people that are in disagreement on this as there is in agreement. And I think they come from both sides, the science industry and the technological industry. There's one thing that I think that is concerning to me about this process, though, is that you've got a compact with 8 states and 2 provinces in Canada that are going to be impacted on this, but yet there's been a call for one meeting in Waukesha. Now, if we're going to shine the light of the day on this and everybody's actually going to get to see what's going on, then you hold at least a meeting in each state in the 2 provinces, or even in the 8 states. But I think if you really want to have that conversation, I know there's been public hearings, but if you really want to have that conversation, I think the states have to have a public hearing to at least take a look at it and hear the sides.
30 seconds each. Final question. I asked you each to look at the results of our last Marquette Law School poll, which contained some water-related questions. One of them was whether or not they favored the diversion, and I think the question was very fairly worded on what the diversion is and the water that would be returned. 34% in the statewide survey of more than 800 people, 34% said they supported the diversion, 51% said they opposed. What do you make of that, Mayor Reilly?
72.5% said that they knew nothing about it, too.
So you think? The more that people know, that would influence their opinion.
There's so much that you need to know in order to make a decision on this that, you really need to have a grasp of the compact itself and Waukesha's application. Both of those are really complex issues. And, so I'm glad I'm here because I can at least tell some people that what our position is and what our application is about and what the compact says.
30 seconds.
I think it was 84 to 86% of the people said if you had to decide between economic development and environmental protection, which one would you do for water in the Great Lakes? And they said environmental protection. I think this country and I think the community is starting to realize that this is a resource that we no longer can take for granted. And I think people are starting to push that way.
All right, let me wrap our part of this up right now and take some questions from the audience. Those of you who have been with us before know the routine. If you're down in the seating bowl, press down on the rim, not on the ball, but on the rim. Keep your finger down on it. We'll be able to hear your question. If you're in the back and you have a question, look for this gentleman over here, Ryan. He has a microphone. He'll hold it while you ask your question. No speeches, please. We'll get to as many questions as we can. Let me go over here. Ryan, why don't you go over? We'll start over to the right and we'll work left.
When Waukesha gets water, where is it going to be treated? Is it going to be treated from Oak Creek and then shipped to Waukesha, or is Waukesha going to be doing the work on purifying and caring for the water before it's distributed to the municipalities and that are using the water?
Okay. The answer to that is that the water will go to the Waukesha water sewage treatment plant and be treated there. Like I already said, we're investing millions of dollars into that plant, and we're going to have a plant that's top of the line in the state of Wisconsin.
I'm sorry, I meant the water that's coming from the lake before it is used, not after it has been used.
Okay, the water is going to be coming in from Oak Creek. It's going to be treated in Oak Creek, and it's clean coming in.
All right, other questions, please. Go to the back here, Ryan.
Yes, I'm from Jefferson County. We have one of the more advanced land use plans in the state, I'd say. I helped propose that or push that plan. Don't we need to pay a price if we locate and do things in a particular area to a degree that they cause problems? Shouldn't we be more foresighted in that? And if we're not, shouldn't we be doing everything but diverting the water as a first step, including some of the things that have been talked about already?
One of the things that you find right now is that decisions are not being made on the long term. You see it from infrastructure to water to our transportation mechanisms. There are no decisions that are being made anymore based on the next generation. That's what I said earlier, and that's up to you to change, candidly. So here's the problem that we forget about when we don't look at the long-term ramifications of those decisions. 9 times out of 10, they tend to cost us a great deal more. So we need to get to a point where we're starting to make decisions based on not only the economics, but what's in the best interest of our future generations. The thing that I'd hope we do right now is step back and take a look at the sheer amount of technology that's available to help us in every aspect. And I would say that you should buy that technology from Milwaukee, Racine, and Waukesha area. But
All right.
Well, it's basically what the question is should the compact be used as a land use plan? And it isn't written as a land use planning tool. It says the boundary for Great Lakes water is counties, up to counties that have some portion of them within the Great Lakes. And that's around the entire Great Lakes. And no water can go beyond that. That's the purpose of the plan. That's the purpose of the compact. And the purpose of that is to protect the Great Lakes so that water never gets beyond that boundary.
Let's take other questions. I'll go to this gentleman right there, and then we'll go to the person.
What does the School of Freshwater Science have to say about it? Maybe they've not taken a position, but as I've read and heard, there's a lot of problems. A lot of the fish in Lake Michigan have all turned female because of the pharmaceuticals going in. So if we add more pharmaceuticals, what happens?
Well, the pharma issue is one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with now. The pharmaceutical industry will say that 70% of that is being excreted by humans, and they may have a point there, but nonetheless, so we try to do education to tell people don't throw your pharmaceuticals down the drain, throw it in garbage. That's the best thing you can do, or bring it back to the pharmaceutical industry. But the reality is this is an issue that we're dealing with, and you're right. We're seeing this in our own studies right outside of the city of Racine in the water. We're seeing dual fish, so dual-gendered fish. So, this is something that's real. It's not something that we make up. It's not something that's, going to happen in 2050. It's things that we're dealing with right now. So are we trying to grapple around this problem and say, how do we fix it? Yes. That's one of many issues that is affecting the Great Lakes. And it's the short-sightedness of decisions that cost us. Example, we allowed these boats to come in and start dumping their bilge water in the Great Lakes. And of course, the fishing industry said, so what? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is now there are 15 trillion zebra and quagga mussels in Lake Michigan. And if you would take all the water out of Lake Michigan and walk from Racine to Michigan, you're not going to step on sand. They're purifying the Great Lakes to the point where they're going to kill the Great Lakes. So is that an issue? Yes. So when somebody from the marine industry says, what's the big deal if my bilge water comes into your lake? Well, I don't know. You tell me. We have to start looking at these issues bigger than that. And that's why this is not a mayor versus mayor. This is the mayor's fighting for his city, and I'm trying to fight for the long-term interests of the Great Lakes. And that's purely, it's that simple, but it's that difficult.
Yeah. I guess, we're trying to expand this to any type of impact that could occur throughout the Great Lakes by the entire Great Lakes community. I guess my question to Mayor Dickert is, are you going to build a sewage treatment plant that will remove all pharmaceuticals, or is it only the city of Waukesha that should do that?
Well, first of all, we are actually looking at it to find out how we can do it and make it economically affordable. But the big thing is that we're the guys at the end of the line. So pharmaceuticals might not be an issue, and it might not be a lot of them or a lot of phosphorus, but the fact is the water is coming to us. It's coming to our city and our river, which is one of our greatest tourist attractions. It has two of the largest fishing opportunities on the planet there. So we're the guys at the bottom, and this is rolling downhill. And that's why, of course, for my citizens, they're not only concerned about this, they're upset about it. But I'm also representing all those mayors that are part of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative.
Well, and the water, you're not really at the end of the line. You're one community of many, many communities throughout the Great Lakes. The waters of the Great Lakes are shared by 8 states and 2 provinces.
Yeah.
Let's take other questions. Yes? Hang on 1 second, please. Not that loud. We need a microphone.
Mayor Reilly, I'm just wondering, what is Waukesha going to do if the application's denied?
Okay.
It's a good question.
There's 2 issues. One, we'd have to review why we are denied. At that point, the Common Council and the water utility would review the reason for the denial. What's going to happen is there needs to be findings of fact done, and then there needs to be a decision by the governors. So if there's a political decision being made that doesn't really support the findings of fact, where a governor says, no, we just don't want Waukesha to have water, then we look at our legal options. If we are denied and legal options aren't even considered, then unfortunately what we probably end up doing, which we would end up doing, is sinking a number of wells south of Waukesha, and those wells they'd be shallow wells, and we'd bring that water into the city of Waukesha. We already know that even under the minimum amounts of not ever increasing our water use, it would impact 700 acres of wetlands, severely impact 700 acres of wetland, and into our ultimate build-out, it'd be more than 1,500 acres of wetlands would be severely impacted. My take on that is that we'd build those wells we would operate them for 10 to 15 years. Everyone would say this is unacceptable, you can't have this impact, and the DNR would tell us, well, go back to Lake Michigan because that's an option under the Great Lakes Compact, and you meet all the terms of it.
Just give us the timetable. We're in the midst of this evaluation by the Conference of Great Lakes Governors. When do you expect a decision?
The ultimate decision would be, we expect it in late May. The governors, let's see, the April is when they're going to have their findings of fact done. They're having the public hearing in February 17th and 18th. April, they'll have a meeting down in Chicago. Late May, early June, they'll have a decision.
Just so I make sure I heard you right, if that decision is no, we're not granting the request, legal action is a distinct possibility.
It's a possibility, however, we're going to be approved, so it's not that great of a possibility.
Let me take maybe one more question or two more questions. Did you have a question over here? I didn't call on you earlier.
Yes, it's a related question to the pharmaceuticals. It's my understanding that there are a number of pharmaceuticals that are resistant to water treatment and go directly into the lake. And there's not settled science with respect to the effect on humans. So I'm wondering why it would be prudent to allow more pharmaceuticals to flow into the lake until there's more settled science.
That's the issue regarding pharmaceuticals is a federal issue, and a state issue. Obviously, the EPA as well as the DNR are reviewing it, and if they make a rule regarding that, it's going to be statewide or nationwide. It's not really appropriate to say under the compact we're allowed to do this if we meet the conditions, but we're also going to add all these other requirements that may or may not even be able to be met that no one else has to follow.
Mayor Dickert, do you want anything?
Well, it's a challenge for all of us, and when you're at the bottom of the line on this whole thing, it's something you have to think about and something you have to deal with. We're working with the pharmaceutical industries and talking to them on a regular basis to see if we can start correcting this, and candidly, see how the toughest job is to get the American public off of pharmaceuticals would be one thing, but that's a little bit bigger than we could imagine. The problem is they are looking for different ways, and we have been going to WEFTEC and the other organizations to find different ways to find binder agents to pharmaceuticals and things like that, but it is a challenge. We just look at it from the perspective that we already have an impaired water system coming down the Root River right now. We don't want to make it any worse.
And what I'd like to add is first of all, I agree that pharmaceuticals and microbeads are a problem, whether they go into any water body. If we're, right now, our treated water goes into the Fox River or it'll go into the Lake Michigan. However, for pharmaceuticals, the biggest thing is for people not to flush them. That's the most important thing. We need to address those problems, but we can't put a laser focus just on the city of Waukesha and say that solves the problem. That doesn't solve the problem. We got to work on it, nationwide.
I am going to wrap up our conversation right now. Before we go, I want to do a couple of things. I want to encourage you to go to the law school website, law.marquette.edu. Check out the events that we have here at the law school, the On the Issue series. We're always adding events to the list. Tomorrow, it is a full house, so no other folks can register, but you can watch it live. We'll have Senator Johnson will be with us tomorrow. We had Senator Feingold last week. And having said that, I want to thank all of you for your tremendous interest in this topic, for how attentive you've been today, and we're delighted that you could join us. And we'd also like to say a special thank you to the Waukesha Mayor and to the Mayor of Racine, Shawn Reilly and John Dickert. Thank you very much.